Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to my channel. I'm Mafalda, and I am so happy to be here and so honored that many of you have resonated with the medicine that I am bringing forth. So thank you for your engagement and thank you for your support. I want to reassure you that my intention is to serve in the truest form that I can and to be the embodiment of a vessel of truth and love. And so in today's video, I want to dive deep into the topic of sacred sexuality. And I do know that this is a controversial topic, but that's exactly why I know that it is so important to discuss. So without further ado, let's dive in. In my previous video, I was talking about how sex has been deemed dirty, and of course there has been a very strong religious influence in that regard. And because we live in this 3D world of duality, and I did forget to mention that duality does go up to the 4D. So in the fourth dimension lies time and space. So that would be linearity. But that's just a quick side note. In this 3D dual world that we are experiencing, I talked about how topics and life gets polarized. So when we reject a part of life, what it does is that it'll start to grow in the shadow. So it doesn't actually disappear. And so what has happened is that because we have shamed, guilted sexuality, we have made it wrong, and we've created this very strong inner conflict because we need sexuality for procreation, but at the same time, we've deemed it dirty. And you can see how that has created so much fragmentation within our own human psyche when it comes to this beautiful, sacred part of life. And so what has happened is that we've moved to the polar opposite. We have made sexuality vulgar. We have lost the sacred, divine connection to sex, to sexuality, to sensuality, and to our bodies. And so I want to make it very, very clear that when I say that sex is not dirty, what I mean isn't that you should go out and have sex with whomever shows up in your field, or that sex is somehow not sacred. It's entirely the opposite of that. And that's why spiritual awakening and spiritual evolution and growth is so much about reconciling paradox. It is when we acknowledge that something is pure and sacred that we can actually honor it. But if we reject it, if we deem it wrong, then that's when it'll go to the polar opposite and we'll start making it banal, as if there's no importance to it, no relevance to it. And that is absolutely not true. Sex is a deep energetic exchange, and there is a deep merge that happens between two beings and a deep exchange that happens between two beings when they share this energetic field. And so this needs to be taken seriously, especially for women, since because we have wombs, we then carry the energy of our partners for years if we don't do the necessary energetic clearing. And so when I say that sex isn't dirty, what I am pointing toward is the fact that sex is, in physical form, one of the purest, deepest ways to commune with the divine through the body. And this level of ecstasy and bliss is truly beyond this world, beyond this realm. And I have had the most profound spiritual experiences when merging with a loved one in this way. Now, does this mean that every time you have sex, there's the potential for that? Absolutely not, because it's going to depend on the level of awareness and consciousness of the two people engaging in this mystical act and the respect for themselves. And a lot of the time, what happens in today's world is that we see it purely as earthly pleasure, as an orgasmic experience to have a peak and then we come down, right? And that is not what sex is at all. And I think most people on the planet have not even come close to scratching the surface of how otherworldly, how mystical, how expansive sacred sexuality can be. Now, when it comes to sacred sexuality, the return to that doesn't happen initially through the other. It does happen through our own connection to our creative life force. So sexual energy is creative energy. It is our creative life force, because sexual energy is what creates life. It's the energy of creation. And so when we learn to connect to that energy within ourselves and to actually harness it instead of just releasing, which is what we see mostly in our world today, and we bring that in, we learn to work with it. And so when we can bring that mature connection to our own sexual energy to the sexual act with a partner, that is where we can literally merge and expand together as one in physical form, having a deeply, deeply spiritual experience in physical form. Of course, this is a process and it is a path, because within the human collective subconscious, we have so much guilt and so much shame and so much contradiction that it has created so much trauma. And like I mentioned, I am a survivor of child sexual abuse, of severe sexual trauma, and I won't discuss my personal story in detail, but what I can say is, to have come into this wisdom, I have had to face the deepest, darkest bits of myself, because sex was used to manipulate me, to abuse me, to use me, and to disconnect me from my own power. And so I have had to heal so much within myself to have been able to open up to sexuality in a way that is healthy, that is expansive, that is just precious and sacred and divine and intimate. And so it has been a beautiful, beautiful path in that way. And I know that it was divinely orchestrated that I go through those experiences so that I could return to sacred sexuality and now share that with you all. And so another thing I want to talk about is how religion entered our human psyche and created this very contradictory, conflictual view and relationship we have with sex. So in the Bible, the way that we would be, the way that it's supposed to happen is that the man is supposed to ask for God's forgiveness upon having the orgasm, because sex is not supposed to be associated with pleasure, just procreation. And you see how this in itself is so problematic and so distorted, because you cannot have procreation without orgasm, for a man. And let's just talk about men here. So it is literally brainwashing a man into thinking that there's something inherently wrong with how he or they experience pleasure, and that ultimately they have to be wrong to experience that wrongness in order to procreate. And so what that does is that it instills this inherent feeling that we are sinners by default. And you can see how that goes against God's truth, because we are God's creation. How could we be inherently wrong? How could we be inherently dirty? And so what we must do is dissociate the idea that orgasm or that pleasure is somehow wrong or dirty or not supposed to happen. That actually, that's the magic of it. That's the beauty of it. How incredibly blessed are we that to procreate and to bring life into this world, we get to experience a blissful, orgasmic, and ecstatic experience in communion with God? Take a moment to let that sink in. Is that not one of the most beautiful parts of what it means to incarnate in human form? It is just magical. It's otherworldly. And so you can see the importance of restoring this sacredness to what sexuality is. The last thing I want to point to in this specific video is that I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am mixed race, and so I am mixed European and African. And I was not baptized when I was young. I am not baptized in any religion. And so much of my connection to spirituality comes from my African side, and this connection to the body, this connection to sensuality, this connection to sexuality. And where I'm from, in Southern Europe, there is a very conservative Catholic culture that used to shame women, African women, for this connection to their body and for the fact that they were not baptized. And so we were somehow labeled as promiscuous because we were not Catholic, and because, of course, so much of our connection is to the body through dance. And so part of what I am here to do is to restore the dignity to the sacred practice of dance and sexuality. African women and our connection to God comes so much through the body. We are connected to our bodies, to sensuality, to the earth, and we have this heat inside of us. And this is literally how we commune with God, how we channel God's truth, and how we become the vessel for the embodiment of love. And yes, I am talking about unconditional love, not 3D love here. Yes, not this human version of contractual love that we have on earth. And so, yes, absolutely, part of my mission is to recover this embodied wisdom of how our connection to our sexuality as women and to dance and to the body is what awakens our power as creators, as these beautiful, magnificent, mystical beings that we are, because we have this womb. And so we are such potent vessels for creation that we have this innate, direct connection to God through the body, through the senses, through feeling, through experiencing, through connection. And so we were shamed and we were led to believe that this was not only promiscuous and dirty, but almost dangerous, that we were moving away from God. And so I am here to remind you that there is nothing promiscuous about dance, about heat, about sensuality, about sexuality, because that is our connection to the earth itself. We are part of the earth. We are all made of the same substance. We are all interconnected and we are all divine beings. And so this deep connection to the earth is something that is reflected in how we experience sex, because sex is the communion of two bodies, and our bodies are earth itself. And so I want to wrap this up by saying that when I talk about sex not being dirty, I am not trying to make it vulgar. I am not saying that it is not precious, not sacred, or not intimate. What I am saying is that there's nothing inherently wrong with it, and to the contrary, that there is something inherently sacred and divine about it, and that connecting to that energy within ourselves is so much of what will help us remember our own power. Yes, as creations, but also as creators ourselves in this world. So I do hope that this message resonates, with you. Do let me know in the comments. And if you have anything to add, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I thank you so much for watching, and we will see each other very soon in another video.